Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is, what if Naruto was forced into royal arranged marriages? Yugito, Temari, Mei and Kuretsuchi Harem Twist. Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The secret that Minato Namikaze was married to one Kushina Uzumaki, and that they were expecting a male child. It doesn't matter who leaked it, or what leaked it, or how it was leaked. It only matters that it did get leaked. And as soon it happened, all the elemental nations had heard it. The secret. The secret that really should have remained secret. Oh. Village hidden in clouds, a week later. Raikage-sama. I looked up from lifting his weights to see at his secretary, Mabui, appear slightly out of breath and more than a little rattled. He quirked a brow. Yes. I have urgent news. It appears that Minato Namikaze is expecting a child with a woman named Uzumaki Kushina. Eyes grew wide with surprise. This was big news indeed. Whenever a cage secured a progeny, they usually kept it a secret until at least they were old enough to be enrolled as a shinobi, for safety reasons of course. But knowing that there's a cage who had a vulnerable, political bombshell of a child currently being made meant that there was a new dynamic to be had. How reputable is the source? Very reputable. A secured progeny is extremely important information, but it opened up many pathways of action. It really boiled down to what I was going to with the information. He could send assassins to kill the woman and the child in an effort to strike at the fourth Hokage's heart. However, that plan was doomed to failure. Even his best assassins would never be able to make it into Konoha, find a woman based only on her name, and kill her, especially due to the fact that she has known relations with the Yellow Flash. Not only that, but if it was ever found out that Cloud did send assassins, it could mean another war, a war that they weren't prepared to fight yet. A war that he didn't have the allies for. Allies. Wait. This could be a golden opportunity for Cloud and Leaf to enter an alliance. The war that had just ended had been a stalemate with all sides conceding to a peace treaty. There was a lot of animosity between the Leaf and the Cloud at the moment, but I could use the information of the Namikaze child to his and the Cloud's benefit. Mabui, get me an arranged marriage document. I yelled with great gusto all at once. Mabui, who was standing there watching him think for a solid minute, suddenly stood straight at attention and gave a quick, yes sir. Amongst a population of trained assassins, saboteurs, and spies, one would think that an arranged marriage between two such ninjas of opposing sides would lead to disaster. But I had met and battled with Minato on the battlefield more than once. He was a shrewd, cunning, and very powerful man, but most of all, he was kind. Not in the sense that he hesitated to kill, but in the sense that he only killed to protect the people of the Leaf Village. If there was an event that could tie the two nations together in peace and harmony, Minato would probably accept it. Now came an equally hard part. Who was he going to get to give consent that their daughter be married off to a ninja of another nation, a nation that they don't have that best of relationships with? It had to be within the Cage bloodline, that much was for certain. Anything less would be an insult to the Hokage. However, I lacked very many female family members. I lacked very many female family members that were nearly newborn. I thought for a moment and snapped his fingers in a way that one could construe he had an idea. Yugito ni. His brother-in-law's daughter. She wasn't directly related to him, but she was a Jinchuriki. That was just as good, if not better. She was also 14, but he didn't have much of any other choices. This is a great plan. I thought, as he began to sign the information of the marriage on the document that Mabui given him. Oh. Village hidden sand, same time. And how reputable is this information? A man with the garb of a cage spoke to a trembling subordinate. Very reputable, sir. The cage for the village hidden in sand sat in thought for a while. While Sand and Konoha hadn't fought together or against each other in any grand-scale fights, Sand was still considered one of the weaker ninja villages. The fact that the Hokage was having a child could be used to create an ally that would bolster the military clout of the hidden Sand village. It was a good thing that he had a daughter who was 2 years old at the moment. Although he wasn't very sure about the prospects of using his daughter for a bargaining chip in political struggle, he had to think of the good of the village and her people. Get me an arranged marriage document, he said coldly. Oh. The village hidden in stones, same time. And how reputable is this information? A very short man with the garb of a cage spoke to his secretary. Very reputable, sir. The very short man sat in silence for an extremely long time, obviously in thought. The Third Shinobi War had been tremendously horrible for their side of the conflict. Well, the war had been horrible for everyone included in the fighting, but it had been particularly horrible for them. The Yellow Flash had single-handedly decimated about 1,000 IWA shinobi, which caused Onoki to create the treaty between them that had just been approved. But even if there was peace between them at the moment, there was a lot of bad feelings involved against Konoha at the moment, and vice versa. The feelings of hatred that the deaths of many of their shinobi were extremely strong. Strong enough that Onoki knew that war would eventually break out between them again. He had been through every single shinobi world war and had no want to be involved in another. An arranged marriage between the fourth son and his granddaughter could potentially create an environment where they would eventually get over their hate of each other. Even if it would be a slow process. Mostly because the child in question wasn't even born yet, and his granddaughter was only 2. Get me an arranged marriage document, sir. Just do it. Oh. The village hidden in mist, same time. And how accurate is this information? A short man with a scar running down one said to his spymaster. Very, sir. The fourth Mizukage gave the spymaster a blank look. And remained in that position until the spymaster felt uneasy enough to back slowly away from his commander-in-chief. One would have to feel extremely uneasy to even think of do something like that. He seems different lately, the spymaster thought to himself, as he went back to his daily work. Oh. The village hidden in waterfalls, same time. Is this information accurate? The Jonin in command said to a Chunin. Yes, it is. The nondescript man sat in silence for a short while. Get me an arranged marriage document, this could be our chance to secure a position amongst the Big Five. Why, yes, sir. The Chunin gave a nervous and slightly louder than it should have been reply once he realized the significance of his task. Oh. Konoha, 14 years before present time. Minato felt really smart at the moment. No, he didn't just feel smart. He felt like he was a genius, a god in man's clothes. Why? A reasonable question. He just found out the best use of shadow clones known to man. Eradicating the scourge that all battle-hardened veterans with years of experience on the battlefield had to face at one point or another. Paperwork. Why is paperwork the scourge of all battle-hardened veterans with years of experience on the battlefield? Another good question. Because meticulously looking through documents, bills, new laws, etc. was just not in the hardwiring of people who survived by making split-second decisions that saved their lives and the lives of their compatriots. And so, he sat back to bask in his brilliance as we watched 4 different shadow clones work through said paperwork. He knew the backlash was going to be a bitch, but at the moment, he just did not care. He should have cared, as all 4 of the clones signed a different marriage document at the same time. When he received the memories, he would just vaguely remember making peace separately with all of the other villages, and brush it off as a delusion as he went to nurse his headache. And that, children, is why you never use shadow clones to do your paperwork. As one child would soon find out the hard way. Omake 1. Kushina could feel the lump of her 4-month-old pregnancy kick her hand as it rested on her belly. She giggled in uncontained exuberance. She had been excited beyond belief when she found out that she was going a mother, and even at home when there was nothing happening, she was always smiling contentedly to herself. Because she was going to be a mother. And she was going to be the most kick-ass mother in the entire world. She continued to smile down at the lump that her hand was resting on, when she felt something that worried her. It was like a vibration coming from her belly, kind of like the unborn child was shivering. Kushina had been briefed on all the stuff about pregnancy, but had never heard of anything like pre-baby shivers. So she immediately got up to go to the hospital to check it out of fear that something might be wrong with Naruto. When she got there and had all the tests that she could possibly go through to convince her that nothing was wrong with the child, she made her way back home and concluded that the whole baby shiver thing must have been her imagination. Iwagakure no Sato, Cage Tower, present time. Why do I have to look over the Chunin candidates? The sour, old Cage mumbled. You know the answer to that, his secretary answered. There weren't even any IWA genin participating. Well, there were a lot of interesting genin that participated according to the information we got. The Chunin exams didn't even finish. Konoha got attacked midway through. The Cage said, raising his voice. The secretary looked at him sternly. Stop trying to get out of work, it's important to know what cards your rival has. Onoki sighed. Fine, fine. What interesting genin participated in the exams? She handed him the files. Dismissed. He said offhandedly. She walked out of the Cage office. Onoki sighed again. Let's see, the Sabaku children. One didn't fight, one got outsmarted, and the other is a psychopathic Jinchuriki. And Aburame didn't fight. The prestigious Uchiha got his handed to him. Anara outsmarted the Sabaku female and gave up right after. A sound ninja didn't even show up. A genius Hyuga beaten to the ground by a nobody Uzumaki. Wait, that last name sounded familiar. Onoki struck a thinking pose. He then got up with a speed that no one would expect from an old man just over 4 feet tall, and flew out the door, into the hallway, and into another room marked filed documents. It was a rather large room. However, Onoki knew exactly which date to look for. October 10th, the day that the Kyuubi attacked Konoha, killed the Yellow Flash, his wife, and his child. It was a few days later that news reached Iwa, and the document that detailed the arranged marriage between his granddaughter, Kuratsuchi, and the as of yet unnamed child of Namikaze Minato was filed, and meant to be forgotten in the expansive, filed documents, room. He found the offending document with little difficulty. It read thusly. I, Onoki III Tsuchikage, would like to offer a peace treaty between Konoha and Iwa. This peace treaty is to be facilitated by the marriage of my granddaughter and your unborn son, in an effort to bring together our two villages and to eventually break the hatred that both of our villages feel for each other. Minato's response. I would love nothing more than peace between our villages. And even if I am slightly shocked that you would suggest the marriage between your granddaughter and my child in order to achieve it, I wholeheartedly agree to it. After all, the only thing that can break down hatred is love. Onoki snorted at that last line. After that page was the page that detailed the whole thing, which included the biological birth names of both the parents and children, any medical things that might be important, and the actual marriage form signed by Minato Namikaze. At the bottom, it noticed Onoki that a copy would be kept in Konoha as well. He then flew back to his cage room, and looked at the picture of the Uzumaki child. That kid's a carbon copy of the fourth. Not only that, but he holds the last name of the woman that was pregnant with him. We should have noticed that. Onoki then looked over at the details of the marriage document form. Assuming that this kid really is the child of Minato, then the document is still valid. Leaf was still weak from the attack from Sand and Sound, but there were rumors that they were going to get Tsunade of the legendary Sannin to lead it to prosperity again. And Iwa is going to be right next to them when they do. Onoki smirked. He flew out of the office again. On his way out, he said, "Get me Kuratsuchi and Akatsuchi," to the secretary working at the desk on the lower floor. "Yes, sir." Oh. Village of Sand, filed documents room, present time. Baki was acting as the stand-in cage. And as per his duty as stand-in cage, he had to look over the filed documents from the past. It was a huge pain in the as he was forced to do some of the most mind-numbing work in the world. But his eyes suddenly narrowed from their previous bored states. Uzumaki. I've heard that name before. Baki then got up to look at the list of Chunin candidates in an effort to prove his suspicions true. Oh. Village of Clouds, Cage's desk. I looked at the Chunin candidates list. Uzumaki. Mabui. He shouted, without looking up. She ran into the room as soon as she heard him shout. Yes. Get me the document detailing the arranged marriage between Yugito Ni and the child of Minato Namikaze. Sir. Now. Why yes sir. Oh. Village of Waterfalls, Village Leader's Tower, present time. Shibuki was going over the Chunin candidates list. Uzumaki Naruto. I could have sworn I saw that name somewhere in the filed documents room. He went up to check, just to confirm his suspicions. Oh. Gates of Konoha, present time. ACHOOO. A sneeze rang out from the mouth of blonde-haired teenager. You okay, brat? That's the fourth time in a row. A particularly busty female said with slight concern. He's okay. Someone's just thinking about him. An extremely tall and weirdly garbed male said. Or some people. A woman with black hair and a pig in her arms added in. Oh, I know. Sakura-chan just realized how awesome I am, and just can't stop thinking about me. Naruto said in triumph. Tsunade leveled questioning gaze to Jiraiya. Sakura-chan. The girl that he's been harboring would for, he replied. Shut up, pervy sage. The teen remarked. Stop calling me that. Stop being a damn pervert. Shut up, both of you. We're at the gates. Tsunade shouted. They both gave a meek, synchronized, okay, and went to the gate guards to show them their papers. After that, Tsunade said that she was going to the tower to get acquainted with the responsibilities of the cage before her inauguration. Shizune followed her, while Jiraiya said something about doing research. Perv. Naruto mentally remarked. It had been a long couple of weeks and Naruto wanted nothing more than to just eat some ramen, take a shower, and pass out in his bed. Naruto made to get to Ichiraku Ramen, when he saw a girl standing in the middle of the road looking all around her with a bewildered expression on her face. She was dark-skinned, had lime green hair, and wore a mesh torso cover, as well as mesh shorts. Over that was a white halter top with the midriff exposed, and a white battle skirt. She also had the symbol for a village that looked vaguely familiar on the forehead protector on her arm. Naruto walked up to her. Hey, are you lost? She looked at him with a small amount of shock on her face. Oh, no, I was just taking it all in. The village? He asked. Yeah, I've never been out of Waterfall before. So this is just, she seemed at a loss for words. New. Yeah, new. Well, if you want, I could show you around the village. Although he only wanted to mind his own business and do some relaxing by himself, his conscience didn't feel comfortable knowing that he let an unknown shinobi wander around Konoha. Really? I couldn't do that, you're probably busy. I just got back from a mission, so I'm free. Plus, I can't stand the idea that someone doesn't know the heaven that is Ichiraku ramen. She looked at him with wide eyes and looked lost for words for a second. Well, if you insist. I do. He then began walking in the direction to the said ramen stand, with her right next to him. You have a name? He asked. Fu. Nice to meet you, Fu. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. He said with his trademarked foxy smile. Oh. Hokage Tower. Tsunade was confused. As was Shizune. As was Taunton. The reason for her confusion stemmed from the fact there was a man waiting patiently in the chair opposite the Hokage desk, while a Jonin with a pineapple haircut and a scar on his nose searched leisurely through a filing cabinet. Hello, she ventured. She got the attention of the man with the pineapple haircut. Who are you? Tsunade of the Sanin. His face morphed into one of surprise. Hello Tsunade-sama, I'm Shikaku Nara. I'm in charge of external affairs in the case that the cage is either predisposed or dead. He said with a formal bow. Okay. Well, I'm here in order to get accustomed to the job of Hokage. I'll get Hirazen's secretary for you, she'll tell you all you need to know. Okay. He walked out of the room. That just left her, Shizune, Taunton, and the man in the chair in a slightly awkward silence. So, who are you? She asked brusquely. Shibuki started. Oh, I'm Shibuki, leader of the village hidden in waterfalls. He replied nervously. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. So why are you here? I just came to confirm an agreement that was formed a while ago. But apparently Nara-san cannot find it his half of the agreement. Shikaku Nara came in just the next moment with the secretary behind him. Well, I hope that you get everything sorted out. Tsunade said as she followed the secretary out of the doorway, with Shizune and Taunton in tow. Shikaku looked at Shibuki. I couldn't find the marriage form anywhere recent, but it could be in the archives somewhere. However, it could take a while to find it. Why do you need the document anyway? Because I believe that the son of the fourth is still alive. Now Shikaku was thoroughly surprised. Really? Well, whether or not that's true, it could take days to find the paper. Do you have a hotel somewhere? Shikaku asked. Although he didn't believe Shibuki for 1 second, he still had an obligation to please any important dignitaries. Even if he did show up out of nowhere with absolutely no forewarning. Yes. It's at the Burning Leaf. You might want to check yourself in. Shibuki and Shikaku left with a Chunin escorting Shibuki to his hotel and Shikaku leaving to form a search party for that unknown document that apparently existed. Konoha, Ichiraku ramen. Ayame didn't know what to make of the situation unfolding in front of her eyes. First Naruto shows up with a foreign kunoichi, he then orders large amounts of ramen, and now they're eating the ramen faster than she can serve it up. They literally eat the ramen faster than it takes for her to put her ladle in a pot, dump the contents in a bowl, and add the extra ingredients, like pork or shrimp. It was simultaneously disgusting and intriguing to watch. Not only that, but they were having a slightly comprehensible conversation. So what, village are you from? Naruto said, while taking breaks in between chunks of words to slurp up ramen. The village, hidden, in waterfalls, she replied. So that's what you meant when you said waterfall. You thought I was from just a random waterfall in the wilderness. She gave a light laugh. How she managed to do this without completely clogging up her windpipe would remain a mystery forever. Well, I've never heard of hidden waterfall, he said in indignation. We share a border. I never paid attention in class. She gave another light laugh. Neither did I. They both laughed this time. So, why are you here? No idea, Leader Sama, just requested I come with him. Well, more like ordered. That's strange. Yeah, it is. Naruto and Fu put down their chopsticks at the same time. Evidently both were full, much to Ayame's relief, as she didn't know how long she was going to be able to keep up. Ayame then thought that it was now the time to tease her little brother figure, seeing as she wasn't running around the kitchen like a chicken with its head cut off. So Naruto, who's your date? They both turned a healthy shade of red and began spouting out denials in gibberish. At that moment in time, Ayame decided that it was really fun being her. Especially when she brought the check. They both immediately stopped trying to deny being on a date with each other, and promptly began arguing over who was going to pay the bill. You're the man, you have to pay. She crossed her arms and huffed. We're not on a date, the same rules don't apply. He deadpanned. Well, I left my money at Waterfall. She said nervously. That is so obviously a lie, and plus, you are a foreign kunoichi in a village that is showing great hospitality by taking you to a ramen restaurant. Fu then tried to come up a response, but was unable to. She dejectedly began taking her money out. Naruto would have let her, if not for the fact that she seemed genuinely angry or frustrated. Not the kind of anger that came from picking the short stick and paying for a meal. Just a different kind of anger. Like an anger at the world. Well, we could split the bill, he got out nervously. Her eyes brightened up, really? Yeah. He took out his Gamma-chan, and put the required bills on the table. She then put her bills on the table, right beside his. The sun was beginning to set. Oh, I have to show you something really cool. He said excitedly. I don't know, it's getting kind of dark. A visit to Leaf would not be complete without this. What is it? A surprise, but we have to be quick. He got out of his seat, and motioned Fu to follow him. Oh. Cage Tower, Filed Documents, Room. And this is the Filed Documents Room, it's where all past documents, from bills and laws, to mission reports are archived. The secretary told Tsunade. Why is this here? Doesn't it seem kind of like a waste of space to keep meaningless documents around? Tsunade asked. She also idly noticed that it seemed to be bustling with activity. They're mostly kept for future references, like if new information comes to light about a previous mission. Is it usually this lively? No, they must be looking for a specific document and don't have any idea as to its whereabouts. Tsunade walked up to a random auxiliary shinobi that was looking through documents in a nearby filing cabinet. Which document are you looking for? The shinobi didn't look up. A document that specifies the marriage between the dead son of the fourth and a Jinchuriki from Waterfall. Her eyebrows rose in surprise. Is there any reason to do that? Shibuki-sama apparently said that he has reason to believe that the fourth son is alive and that the contract was still valid. Tsunade didn't know the fourth very well. She interacted with him from time to time, seeing as he was the student of her teammate. But didn't really care for him. That's not to say that she didn't like him, she just didn't know him. So when she heard that he had died from the Kyuubi attack along with his wife and son, she was saddened slightly, but it didn't bother her greatly. Has this been confirmed? We don't know yet, he won't tell us until we procure the document. Does Jiraiya know about this yet? If someone had reason to believe that the fourth son was alive, it would make sense to notify him. Seeing as he was the teacher to the fourth. No, there hasn't been time, and we're short on manpower as it is. That, and the fact that we have no idea where he is at the moment. She knew where he was. And if she found him there doing what she thought that he was doing, she was going to make sure that he suffered divine retribution. After that, if he was still alive, She had to tell him about the suspicions about the fourth son being alive. She looked at the secretary. That's the end of the Hokage's duties, correct? She gave a nod. Good. Then in that case I'm going to go inflict blunt force trauma on my teammate. Tsunade then walked briskly out of the cage filing room in search of said teammate. Oh. Naruto didn't know what to make of Fu. She seemed almost surprised that he even talked to her when they first met and had a personality that spoke of meekness. But she quickly opened up, and produced a happy-go-lucky attitude and an affable personality. And there was also that expression of complete anger that she adopted when he argued her into paying for the meal. She was strange. But he could hardly judge or persecute her for that fact, not with the ninja that he hung around with on a daily basis. They reached a set of stairs that led up to the Hokage monument. We're allowed up here? Fu asked incredulously. She thought it was just a decoration, albeit a really huge and imposing decoration. Yeah, although practically no one comes up here. Why? I have no clue. She deadpanned, and he laughed. When they did reach the summit, she audibly gasped. The view. That view of the sunset was the most beautiful thing that she had ever seen in her life. The huge tree at the center of the village hidden in waterfalls was picturesque, but while the tree's setting seemed like a painting, the sunset seemed like an explosion of beauty. The way that the orange and pinks of the sky marked the big, fat, and lazy-looking clouds. The way that the forest looked almost like it was on fire with the reflection of the sun glancing off of it. The view of the bustling metropolis that was Konohagakure. They all combined to make a picture worthy of admiration. She could also see the damage from the sound sand invasion, but pushed that thought to the back of her mind for now. I make an awesome tour guide, don't I? Naruto said with his arms crossed and his head held high. You took me to a ramen stand and the top of the monument, that's not really a tour of the village. He deflated a bit and sat down to enhance his visage of dourness. She bent over close to his face, closed her eyes, and procured a large smile. But this is great, she added. He inflated back up with happiness at her remark. They watched until the sun set completely. Do you need an escort back to your hotel? He asked. If you wouldn't mind. She had been to the hotel to put her stuff away, but after her traipse across Konoha, she didn't think that she'd be able to easily find her way back. Of course not, it's the job of the host ninja to look after the foreign ninja. Says the guy who made us split the bill at the ramen stand. She added smartly. He started to fumble for an excuse. But don't worry about it, she added quickly, it's fine. I'm staying at the Eastern Dragon. Oh, I know where that is. Konoha was an extremely large village, even in comparison to other, non-ninja villages. So it was lucky that he knew the position of the hotel, and that was only because the hotel was known for being so prestigious. He then started to lead her back to said hotel. When they reached the Konoha proper, she noticed something that she had ignored before. The stairs. The whispers. The things that she hated the most in the world were appearing before her again. When she first came to Konoha, she was astounded by the looks that got. There were stairs, there were whispers. She could feel them on her at all times. But they weren't born out of caution, they weren't there because she was a reminder to the people about all of the family members and friends who died because of the seven-tailed beetle. They were there because she was a foreign ninja wandering around Konoha. It was the most liberating feeling that she had ever felt. But now, and even a little bit before now, she noticed that they were back. The looks of caution, the looks of sorrow, and the whispers that she couldn't hear, but she knew that they were about her. They were back. It left her confused and sad and angry. But then she looked at Naruto, and looked at the side of his earnest face, and she didn't feel so mad anymore. Fu didn't know why the people were looking at her like that again, but it comforted her to know that there was at least one person who didn't seem to mind her. In fact, he seemed to really like spending time with her. Out of the corner of his eye he noticed that Fu was staring at him, facing her. He asked, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine." The stare that Fu had directed towards him was devoid of much, if any emotion. As she was rather conflicted at the moment, and put up her emotional mask to avoid any unpleasant conversations about conflicted feeling appearing on her face. "If you say so." Being stared at emotionlessly was another tick that he added to her list of strange behavior. He led her back to her hotel and bid her goodbye. When he made it home, he fell asleep the moment he fell on his bed. Oh 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 oh. Tsunade was looking at a puddle of a man. A man who had bruises, welts, cuts, and even snake bites was floating face up in a hot spring. Tsunade was looking at a puddle of a man through a distinctly man-shaped hole that coincidentally was the dividing wall of the female's side of the hot spring resort. I pity the man who has to clean up the pool, she thought, showing absolutely no concern for her dying teammate. But it was a good life lesson for Jiraiya, who for all intents and purposes now felt like exactly what he looked like. A puddle of a man. Note to self. Never peep on Kunoichi ever again. He got up and out of pool, laid by the side of the spring, and began to feel sorry for himself. Tsunade stepped through the man-shaped hole in wall. "Get up. I have something important to tell you." She had her professional tone out, signifying that she was going to tell him something important and that she wasn't in the mood for any bullshit. His speed at standing up was very slow. Shibuki from the hidden waterfall believes that the son of the fourth is alive. He turned still as stone mid-stand. Oh, and why would he think that? He questioned nervously, with a hand scratching at the back of his head and a sheepish grin on his face. Wait. He knew something. "What do you know?" she asked. "I don't kn. What do you know?" This wasn't a question from a friend, it was a command from a cage. He looked around, and she noticed that he extended his chakra sensory vision to make sure that they were alone. After nodding to himself, he said, "Naruto is the son of the fourth." "What? You were going to be told when you were inaugurated, it's kind of a secret." "But more importantly, why does Shibuki think that? Was there an information leak?" "He said that he won't tell us what he knows until we get a specific document from the files room." "Did he say which document?" "The document pertaining to the arranged marriage between the son of fourth and their Jinchuriki." Jiraiya's eyes bugged out of his head. "What?" Tsunade adorned a surprised look. "Didn't Minato tell you? The marriage of his son is kind of an important thing to tell the godfather." "He told me nothing." "Are you sure that the document is legitimate?" Jiraiya was talking frantically now, making all the hand gestures that he could with deadly snake neurotoxin permeating his veins. "They're acting like it is." "Who's they?" "The shinobi in charge of external affairs." Quote exclamation mark. "If they find that the document is legitimate, which I don't think it is, and have proof that Naruto is the son of the fourth, and go through with the wedding, the secret will get out." They both stopped talking as they processed the information. "Well, you know what you have to do now. Don't you?" she asked. "Tell him the truth of his heritage. Seems we think alike." "Shit. He wasn't supposed to find out until he was older." "Why?" "Because if word got out that he's the son of the fourth, he would get put into the bingo book immediately." "But why didn't you just tell him and him alone?" "I couldn't trust him to keep his mouth shut about it." Silence again fell upon the two of them. It was a surreal sight, the next Hokage talking about matters of grave importance in an onsen, to a man who looked like he needed immediate medical attention. Tsunade walked up to him and did some rudimentary healing. "This is a really up situation," he said. "Which one? The thing about the marriage and Naruto? Or the fact that I'm healing a godforsaken pervert in an onsen?" "Both." She shared his sentiments. Oh 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 oh. Meanwhile, at the gates, gate guards Azumo and Katetsu were getting ready for the night shift, when they heard the sounds of talking. Why won't you tell us why we're here? An agitated teenage male voice sounded out. Because I don't want you to get worked up over nothing. Came a cooler, older male voice. A man wearing the official Sanjonin garb walked into view, along with the three Sabaku children. This immediately put them on guard. Even if the peace treaty between the two nations was being seriously considered, they were still considered enemies of the state. The only reason that they weren't being engaged in conflict stemmed from the fact that they were walking serenely and seemingly without a care in the world up to the gate guards. Baki walked up to them and said, I'm here as acting cage and have matters of extreme importance to discuss with the village leader. They nodded in unison, both wide-eyed and scared shitless. Katetsu made a motion to a shadow on the wall, which revealed a hidden Anbu operative. She'll show you to the mansion. The Anbu nodded at the group of four, and began to lead the way. Katetsu wasn't sure if he made the right call when he did that, because there were no guidelines to go by when a foreign cage shows up at the gates unannounced. Not 15 minutes went by when they caught sight of a different group, this one composed of two very large and imposing dark-skinned men, and one slight, fair-skinned woman. She had an agitated look on her face. It appeared that they had recently been having an argument. The larger of the two men walked up to them. They both almost shit their pants when they realized who he was. The imposing stature, slicked back blonde hair, straight goatee and mustache, and extremely stern demeanor gave him away. It also didn't help that he was wearing his cage robes. The rakeage. They both unknowingly thought simultaneously. I need to have an emergency meeting with the Hokage. I said gruffly. They both looked at each other, both expecting the other to come up with a plan of action. Leaf and Cloud weren't on the best of terms. In fact, if Konoha ninjas found a Cloud ninja inside their city, they would do their best to capture, interrogate, and execute the spy, because he or she would most definitely be a spy, because he or she would never have been let in the first place. But, again, there were no guidelines for when a cage of another village shows up without warning and cordially asks to see the acting cage. So Azumo finally gave out a shaky, I'll escort you to the tower. I nodded and began to follow Azumo with Yugito and be walking behind. Azumo wasn't actually supposed to leave his post, but without any Anbu operatives to show them the way, he was given little choice. Not 10 minutes later, another group of three showed up. There was a huge and imposing teenager with a happy look on his face, an average-height female with a mischievous smirk on her face, and an extremely small old man with a look of exasperation on his face. All with the mark of Iwa on them somewhere. Katetsu fainted. Luckily, by this time the Anbu operative was back, which was good, since it meant that the sand diplomats really were just there to talk to the Hokage, and not wreak havoc across the village. She just sighed and motioned for the three confused shinobi to follow her. Omake too. Tsunade was grinning like a moron, had a stream of blood rushing down her nose, and was excitedly writing down her findings in her notebook. She was also crouched up in a tree, and was taking turns looking into a spyglass into the steamy male side of the onsen. Tsunade had never particularly liked looking into the male side of the onsen out of perverse pleasure, mostly because the one onsen that she looked into had been civilian in nature, and the males didn't exactly take care of themselves the way that shinobi did. But this onsen was different. It was chock full of young, charismatic, well-built, and very affectionate male shinobi. She had never known the pleasure of looking at scantily clad, attractive males, while writing down her findings into her little notebook. She heard a shuffling in a tree across from her, which scared her into accidentally shuffling in her tree, creating a sound that carried to the first tree. Everything stilled for a second, until she trepidatiously removed the leaves obscuring her vision to look into the eyes of Jiraiya, who was doing the same with his tree. The tree that he was on had a perfect view of the female side of the baths. They both stared at each other for a good 30 seconds without either side knowing what to do. Until Jiraiya slowly retracted the leaves and obscured her sight of him once again. After he was fully gone from her vision, she pulled her leaves back into place as well and continued with her perversions. It appeared that they two Sannin had finally reached a point of understanding. Naruto was sleeping soundly. The reason that he was sleeping soundly stemmed from the fact that he is now awake. Woken up by Jiraiya, who was still bleeding profusely, even after receiving medical treatment from Tsunade. He didn't immediately recognize Jiraiya. It was dark, so all he saw was a huge bear of a man, who was covered in blood, shaking him from his deep slumber. Unsurprisingly, he didn't take it too well. What the fuck? Naruto immediately jumped away from his bed, and onto a nearby wall, which he clung onto with chakra. Jiraiya jumped back to hit the flip on the light switch. The reason he didn't do that in the first place was because he wanted to wake Naruto up quietly and gently, hoping to create a safe environment in order to tell him the secret of his family. That didn't exactly work the way he hoped, as evident by the fact that Naruto was currently clinging to a wall whilst breathing extremely heavily. Pervy Sage, Naruto asked, "What are you doing here? Is everything alright? Why are you injured?" Naruto stopped his rapid-fire question asking when Jiraiya put up his hand with his palm facing Naruto. The universal symbol for, "Shut the up. I have something to tell you, sit down." Naruto fell from the wall to land on his bed. "What's wrong? What happened to you?" He was seriously getting scared. "Oh, I just got caught peeking on woman in a bathhouse." Jiraiya smiled, closed his eyes, and started rubbing the back of his head. The universal symbol for nervousness. "You, I almost had a heart attack." Jiraiya's face morphed to dead seriousness in an instant. "I have something to tell you, sit down," he repeated. Naruto sat down on his bed, grumbling all the way. Quote, comma, quote, quote, comma, quote, quote, comma, quote. "Well?" Naruto asked. Jiraiya was trying to figure out the best way to tell Naruto. The situation came as a surprise for both of them. "I have something very serious to tell you, and I want you to take this seriously as well." "Okay, I will. What is it?" Naruto was starting to get impatient, and he was still very cranky after getting woken up in such strange manner. Quote, comma, quote, "Not this again." Naruto complained about Jiraiya's quietness. "What do you know about the fourth?" he asked suddenly. "The fourth? He killed a lot of people in the Third Shinobi War. His nickname was the Yellow Flash, and he sealed the Kyuubi inside of me." "Anything else?" "He was really awesome. When he sealed the Kyuubi inside of you, he was expecting a child with a woman named Uzumaki Kushina." "Okay, so, she shares your last name." "Well, there are a lot of Uzumaki in Konoha, right?" In class, the students were taught about the Uzumaki clan, who were known to be extremely good at sealing techniques, and also extremely close allies to the Hidden Leaf. So close in fact that there's a spiral on the back of Konoha flak jackets to commemorate them. Even though Uzushiogakure was destroyed in the war, and the survivors were displaced, with the exceedingly close bonds between the villages, it was assumed by the students of the academy that there were at least some Uzumaki living in the Hidden Leaf, even if they hadn't met any. "Naruto, you're the last Uzumaki living in Konoha." Naruto's eyes grew wide, then he got into a thinking pose. "No way," he whispered. Jiraiya produced a book out of his pocket, he opened it, and took out a picture that was inside. The picture was of a blonde man, who was smiling profusely, and his equally smiling, very pregnant wife. "These are your parents, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki." Jiraiya didn't want to present Naruto's father as the fourth. Too impersonal in his opinion. He introduced them as they were known by their friends and family. Naruto fell silent. Why? He croaked. Why what? Why are you telling me this now? A tear hit the picture that he was holding. Why am I just now learning this? Why did I grow up alone, thinking that my parents didn't want me, didn't love me? He started to sob fully now. His sobbing was racking his body with fits. This was what Jiraiya wanted to avoid, although he didn't truly think that he would be able to. Listen, kid, your parents loved you. Whenever Minato wrote me letters, there was always a page devoted to you, about how he and Kushina loved you. What Minato did, he did not do lightly, and he always wanted you to grow up loved. They sat in silence for a while. Naruto's sobbing started to stop. You didn't answer my question. Why now? Jiraiya asked rhetorically, referencing Naruto's original question. There's a chance that something could happen that would reveal the secret of your lineage, and I wanted you to hear it from me before you could be told any other way. Why was it kept a secret? His crying stopped completely, but there were still tears running down his face. If your lineage became public knowledge, you would immediately be put into the bingo book. Your parents wanted you safe above all else. He became silent. They sat there for a while encompassed in silence and misery. There was a knocking at the windowsill. Outside was an Anbu operative. He let himself in and announced, Tsunade-sama requests your audience. It was directed to Naruto. Jiraiya blanched. Is it? Jiraiya asked vaguely. The operative nodded. Oh. Academy administration. Minutes before. Tsunade sleeps in the cage mansion. After all, it is the cage mansion. All cages before her had lived there, and all cages after will live there. So when her discussion with Jiraiya ended, she went to Cage Mansion to get some rest. When she got close to the mansion, however, she was interrupted by a shinobi that told her Shikaku Nara needed her at the administrative section of the academy. The place where she would do her duties as Hokage on a daily basis. Which led to her current situation. Standing in front of Shikaku, who had a document in his hands. A very official-looking document. We found it. That's all he said. Quote, quote. So I suppose we should tell Shibuki tomorrow? She asked. That would make sense. Quote, quote. Is that it? Yes. Quote, quote. Can I go home n? The secretary burst into the room and yelled, Shikaku-san. He started. Yes. The acting cage is here. She said with a tone of confusion and desperation. Here. In the village. Here. Downstairs. Shikaku's eyes went wide. He was a man known for always looking into strategic events that could possibly take place. Knowing that there was a cage directly under him had never been a thought that had crossed his mind before. What's he want? To talk to the acting Hokage. Quote, quote. The secretary stood around nervously, glancing at the two of them, not knowing what to do. So send him up, he said with energy, an affliction not extremely present amongst the Nara clan. Why yes. He could hardly blame her for her lack of knowledge of what to do. After all, there weren't guidelines for these situations. Baki stepped inside, leaving his delegation outside. He looked at Tsunade. Hokage-sama, I have something important to ask of you. Actually, I haven't been inaugurated yet. Shikaku-san, she motioned to Shikaku, is in charge of external affairs. He looked at Shikaku, then back at Tsunade. This is important for both of you to hear. He decided. I just want to go to sleep. This was, strangely enough, thought by both Shikaku and Tsunade simultaneously. I believe that you have the sister document to this one. He pulled out a document. A very official-looking document. Shikaku took it. His eyes grew wide. Tsunade took it from Shikaku. Her eyes grew wide. What the? This was, strangely enough, said by both Shikaku and Tsunade simultaneously. We need to contact Naruto and Shibuki Dono. Shikaku said. He pointed to two shadows on the walls. Anbu melted out and went to complete their tasks. Did you find any documents that look like this in when you were looking for that other one? Tsunade asked Shikaku. No, we were looking for a document that mentioned the Jinchuriki from Waterfall, not the previous Casecage's daughter. Could you go find it? I'll try. He let out a mighty sigh, and walked out. Baki doesn't really surprise easily. But that doesn't mean he wasn't confused. Because he was very confused. Tsunade noticed his confusion. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to wait until he returns. He nodded. He was, however, a very patient man. When he brought up his suspicions to the Sand Council, a vote took place over whether or not bring this up with Konoha, and then a vote took place over whether or not to immediately go to Konoha in order to confirm the document. The first vote was a landslide. The second was close, but in the end, he was sent as acting Kage along with the Sabaku children. He planned to only take Temari, who was the one mentioned in the document, but Gaara insisted in being taken along with them. And then Kankuro also expressed an interest in coming along with them. Baki was being constantly bugged by Kankuro, and to a lesser extent, Temari on the way to Konoha. Luckily though, Gaara didn't express much concern with the actual mission, he mostly focused on his siblings, and their interactions with each other. Baki reclined into his chair for the wait that was about to transpire. Oh. I was very tempted to jump through the window to administration. However, with the small amount of tact he had, he decided it would be a better idea to politely ask the secretary for an audience with the acting Hokage. He, along with his entourage, followed the secretary up the stairs to the administration room, where he noticed that there were 3 sand shinobi were standing outside of it. Strange. The secretary opened the door and announced his presence. Shikaku also came down the hallway, and into the room, along with I. They then had an exchange very similar to Baki's. Jiraiya showed up with a red-eyed Naruto and told him to stay outside. Shikaku came out of the door again, and down the hallway, and into the filed documents room. Gaara looked at Naruto. Naruto looked at Gaara. Naruto was starting to get nervous. Thanks, the monotonous voice of Gaara came out. For what? Naruto said with a confused tone of voice. For showing me that I don't need to kill in order to reaffirm my existence. I never got to tell you how much you helped me out. Both Kankuro and Temari went wide-eyed. This is the guy who fixed Gaara. They both thought. Now, I look after the people who are precious to me, my siblings. Gaara even smiled. It was an unpracticed, seemingly painful smile. But it was a smile nevertheless. Naruto smiled back, and held out a fist. It's no problem. They bumped fists. Kankuro and Temari stayed wide-eyed at the exchange taking place in front of them. Naruto then noticed them. Okay, wait. Let me see if I have this right. He pointed at Kankuro. You are, Kankuro. Kankuro, he said with a groan. Close enough. And you are, Temari. Right. I feel like I got that right. Yeah, I'm Temari. Both Yugito and B looked at this with an eyebrow quirked, but both decided not to say anything out of accidentally offending the Leaf Shinobi and the Sand Shinobi. Already happened once and that almost started a way. Usually B would jump into any situation with rhymes A flowing, but thought better of it in this situation. Then Shibuki and Fu showed up. Fu was ordered to wait outside, who looked really disgruntled. Her sleep was interrupted, she was cranky. That crankiness went away when she saw that Naruto was outside as well. Shibuki went inside the room to meet up with the other head powers. Fu. What are you doing here? He asked. I don't know, a shinobi came in through our window and woke us up. Fairly standard practice in the shinobi world. Are you okay? She asked, noticing the redness of his eyes, indicating that he had been crying. Yeah, I was just told some pretty heavy stuff, that's all. Oh, sorry. This is Gaara, Kankuro, and Temari. He pointed to each of them respectively. Hello, I'm Fu. She held out her hand to Gaara, who looked at it uncomfortably. He's not very good with strangers. Naruto whispered to her. She changed the direction of her hand to Kankuro, who shook it, then Temari, who also shook it. She looked at Yugito and B. Who are they? She whispered to Naruto. No clue, he whispered back. He decided to introduce himself. Hello, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Seeing no alternative, the woman replied. I'm Yugito. And I am the mighty Kurabi. B said enthusiastically and in rhyme. They all introduced themselves to each other. Except for Gaara, who didn't like crowds, and was starting to feel uncomfortable. Naruto noticed that Yugito and B were Cloud Shinobi. So why are you guys here? He asked bluntly. A reasonable question that was unpleasantly phrased. We have no idea, Yugito bitterly responded. She had pestered Ai for the longest time on their trip to Konoha about it. Jinchuriki would usually never be let out the village, but this case was apparently big enough that it warranted a double Jinchuriki escort. But now, here she was, waiting outside a door for a diplomatic incident. Needless to say, she wasn't in a good mood. Naruto looked at Gaara, who shrugged awkwardly. And then at Fu, who also shrugged. So none of us know why we're here. No one answered. At that moment, a short man flanked by an androgynous teenager, and a mountain of a man followed the female secretary into the Hokage room, with the two escorts waiting outside with the rest of the entourages. Shikaku also came around the hall, into the room, and almost immediately out of it. Do either of you know what's happening? He asked bluntly. They seemed shocked at first from the bluntness, but the androgynous one spoke up. No, I take it you don't either. No. Awkward silence fell upon them. Rock Shinobi usually didn't particularly like Konoha Shinobi, but the large one just had a childish look on his face, and the androgynous one just didn't seem to have any interest in conversing with either of them. So, I'm Fu, who are you two? She asked. Then a round of introductions happened. All except for Gaara, who felt even more uncomfortable. This is kind of surreal. Kankuro said, ninja from 5 different nations just waiting outside a door, making small talk, not knowing what's going on. I don't think something like this has ever happened. They all nodded in agreement. Indeed, nothing like this ever has happened. Shikaku went into the room from the hall. Just after that, Jiraiya poked his head through the doorway. Can you all come inside? Oh 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 oh. The room was cramped. Very cramped. There wasn't supposed to be this many people in the room. But there was now, because history was about to be made. On the desk were 4 pairs of documents, all with the Hokage stamp of approval. Shikaku was making a Nara thinking pose copyright by the corner of the room. By the time everyone had filed into the room, he opened his eyes in realization. Jiraiya, did Minato know the shadow clone technique? Shikaku asked. Naruto slightly flinched at the mention of his father's name. He mentioned it vaguely in one of his letters. I think I know what happened. Tsunade made a motion for him to continue. All of these documents were filed near each other, but also separate from each other. This doesn't make a lot of sense because of the nature of these documents. One would assume that he would put them at least touching each other. There's also the fact that he actually made these 4 documents. So my theory is that he used 4 different shadow clones to help with his paperwork, and they all signed a different form at the same general time. After each of his clones filed the documents, they all dispelled, and he forgot about the whole thing. It's an outlandish theory, but I can't think of any others that would make sense. All the cage-level shinobi nodded their heads, along with Shibuki, while the lower-than cage-level shinobi, sans Shibuki, just looked even more confused. Tsunade then addressed the lower-than cage-level shinobi, sans Shibuki. About 14 years ago, news got out to the elemental nations that Minato Namikaze was having a child. 4 hidden villages each sent a peace treaty, independently of each other, that would be facilitated by an arranged marriage with the unborn child, which would be carried out once he became a chunin. All of them had their eyes wide open. Naruto, while a little slow at times, had a slight understanding of what was going on. She continued, he then accidentally signed all 4 of them independently, and promptly forgot about them. Naruto's mouth was wide open. He was in complete and utter shock. These documents are, he searched for the right word, irrelevant, right? On the contrary, they were all approved not 30 seconds ago. She smirked. Yugito ni, Temari Sabaku, Kuratsuchi, and Fu. Say hello to your new husband, Naruto Uzumaki, son of Minato Namikaze. Needless to say, the entire room erupted into chaos. Omake 3. On the contrary, they were all approved not 30 seconds ago. She smirked. Yugito ni, Temari Sabaku, Kuratsuchi, and Fu. Say hello to your new husband, Naruto Uzumaki, son of Minato Namikaze. All the escorts that weren't involved in marriage looked like they had all been smacked in the face with a shovel. The ones involved, however, Kuratsuchi seemed very excited. Score. I can't believe that I'll get to spend my whole life with the son of the man who killed 1,000 of my village's shinobi. He's so hot and dreamy despite being 13. I want him so much, and carry his children. She had stars in her eyes, indicating the pleasure that she took from the knowledge that she had obtained. Naruto turned ashen in shock, and scooted away from her out of fear. Until he felt arms wrap around his torso from behind. Her stature marked her as Yugito. Hey little kitten. I know that we just met, but I think that I love you. Wanna like cats in heat and give me a litter? After saying what she needed to say, Yugito proceeded to blow into his ear. At this point, Naruto was perceiving everything as a bad dream. He unwrapped her arms from his torso, and made to Tsunade, but was blocked by an outstretched war fan. Temari leveled a lustful look at him. I know this is sudden. But I'm voraciously in love with you, and I don't care if I have to share you with 3 other chicks, because I am going to the wind out of your sails. The obvious logical fallacy aside, Naruto turned to the only person that he felt like he could count on. Fu. She was looking on at the situation unfold with as much surprise as was. So he quickly ran to her side for some morsel of normality. He felt safe-ish by her person until he felt a hand go into the waistband of his pants and reach for his manhood. She whispered in his ear. I'll be your queen, so let's make some workers. Naruto reeled away from her. He didn't even know what to do with the bug metaphor. All eyes were on him, all showing one emotion or another. One would believe that being surrounded by females who only wanted to the daylights out of one would be an extremely opportune event to happen to that person. But as Naruto looked at all his fiancée's various expressions of lust, the only emotion that came over Naruto was dread. They advanced on him at the same time, all with thoughts on procreation. Don't worry though. He'll learn to love it. There were shouts and words of disbelief amongst the companions of the cages. A tick mark appeared on Tsunade's forehead and her eyebrow twitched furiously. Shut up. She yelled at all of them. If you have any concerns, I would be willing to take them at the moment. She said quietly. Tsunade would at least be fair and listen to their concerns. I refuse. This concern came from none other than Naruto Uzumaki himself. You have no choice in the matter, it's already been decided. She said bluntly. Naruto deflated. Why is this happening? This concern came from a shocked Temari. It's happening in an effort to unite all of the elemental nations and to eliminate the threat of war from ever happening again. Baki answered succinctly. She quieted down. How old is he? This concern came from Yugito, who had narrowed eyes. 13. Tsunade remarked. Do you honestly expect me to marry someone half my age? She asked frostily. Yes. I replied severely. Yugito was about to go on a tirade, but Kuretsuchi beat her to it. Wait. Wait. How is an arranged marriage between 4 women, and 1 child? Naruto opened his mouth up to speak up at the child remark, but thought better of it. Supposed to unite all on the elemental nations and end the threat of war. Tsunade smirked. I'm glad you asked. Reikage Dono? She asked, expecting him to answer the question. No war that has ever broken out between the nations happened because someone wanted there to be a war between the nations. Some skirmishes break out due to petty things like trade disputes, but those usually have little lasting impact on the nations as a whole. Wars break out mainly because of misinformation, miscommunication, or mistakes that snowball out of control and spread discontent and hatred between the masses. All of you are related to a cage in some way. Shibuki looked like he was about to speak up, but thought better of it. That means that the people look up to you as paradigms of what they should hope to become like. If you associate with each other, and the masses know that you associate with each other, and genuinely, at least like each other, then the walls of hatred begin to break down. Onoki decided to add in, there will also be other steps taken towards peace, such as communal trading camps, embassies from the villages, lowered trading regulations, and so on. It would appear that the cages all had talked this through quite thoroughly while the rest of everyone was all in the hall. Fu decided to chip in, but if you all already decided on getting along with each other, why is there a need for us to all get married? She asked nervously. Tsunade replied with, well, first of all, you all aren't getting to each other, all the 5 individuals side, you 4, she motioned to the 4 women, are all getting married to him, she motioned to Naruto. The 5 in question nearly face-faulted. And second, I believe we already went through this, but if the masses see the people that they look up to getting along with each other, we believe that they would be more willing to brush aside their differences and hatred, and at least try to get along with each other as well. And you think that when the masses see the people that they look up to join a harem, the masses will suddenly feel incentivized to get along better? Kuretsuchi added incredulously. And plus, Naruto joined in, the people don't look up to me. If anything, they look down on me. Same for me, Fu added. They both then realized what the other said, and looked at each other in confusion. Why do people look down on you? Aren't you the son of the 4th Hokage? She asked accusingly. I just learned that I actually had parents about. He looked at his non-existent watch, 30 minutes ago. He replied cheekily. Well, why are you looked down on? She asked again. That's, he looked at Tsunade for support. She just made a motion with her hand, the motion that mean, continue. His eyes grew wide. She meant for him to tell everyone that he's the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. He took a deep breath, the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Everyone's, except for Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Shikaku, eyes widened. Fu's, Yugito's, and B's most notably. Wah. But, FWAH. Fu's brain was starting to shut down. After all, she had just heard that one of the few people who had even been somewhat nice to her, was also one of the fewer people who could actually empathize with her, and was also the person who she would be joining a harem for. Fu is the Jinchuriki for the 7-tailed beetle. Shibuki said. Naruto and Yugito's eyes widened even more. She looked at his accusingly. FWAH. She asked, said. What? If we're going to do this, then we have to lay down all the secrets that would be pertinent information to this marriage. Shibuki said. All eyes were on him, and that was starting to make him even more nervous. All was silent for about 3 seconds. Yugito is the Jinchuriki for the two-tailed cat, and be here is the Jinchuriki for the eight-tailed octopus. I said impulsively. They both looked at him incredulously. What? He replied. Shibuki Dono is correct. If a secret comes out later that could jeopardize this marriage, that would show a lack of trust in each other right now. If we really mean to bring peace to all of the elemental nations, then for that to be even remotely feasible, we all have to show complete trust in each other right now. I said with complete professionalism. I am the Jinchuriki for the one-tailed tanuki. All eyes were on Gaara, who looked as stoic as always. Kuretsuchi has lava release. Onoki said. Gramps. What? Blue, why are we getting married? Why don't you all get married? She gestured to all the cage. Complete silence reigned for a total of 5 seconds. 5 seconds. What? Tsunade managed to get out. Yeah, that's right, she said, as if confirming her own idea. I see 4 perfectly good males, and 1 perfectly good female. All of whom are the head of nations that want to enter an alliance with each other, and all of them are looked up to by the people of the countries that they represent. All the cage looked at each other. I'm not even the cage, I'm the acting cage, Baki said, not wanting to be a part of the conversation. Tsunade formed a face that spoke of deep thought. Because we don't want to. She said. They all face faulted. We still don't have everything ironed out, she continued. Like the housing situation. Why don't we just give them one of the empty residential houses? Jiraiya said, for the first time this meeting. That could work in the short term, but what about in the long term? She asked. He thought for a bit. You said that you were going to be putting up embassies in all of the villages, correct? Yes. Why don't we just send the Anbu teams that know the Hiroshin along with the ambassadors, so they could travel between the nations at free will? Jiraiya didn't know that there were no such Anbu teams, and that the only 3 people who knew the Hiroshin other than the 2nd and 4th Hokages were all just normal Jonin. And that they all needed to be together to make the technique work. That's a good idea, Jiraiya. Tsunade was ignorant to the situation as well. Thanks. He puffed his chest out in pride, which hurt his still aching lungs. While they were having this conversation, the 5 who were involved with the marriage were silent, shocked beyond the point where speech would be plausible. Wait, Naruto said. They all looked at him. You said that the marriage would only be valid once I made Chunin. I'm still a genin. Naruto believed that he found the loophole that would bring the talk of marriage crashing down, and felt good knowing that he found it. Oh, that reminds me. Tsunade said. She brought out something from beneath the desk and tossed it over to Naruto. It was a flak jacket. Nice job on the promotion, Naruto. He looked devastated. But I love someone else. He said. Her eyes softened. Naruto, you want to be Hokage, right? She asked. He nodded. Well, being Hokage means making tough decisions for the good of the people. You all have to understand, she looked at the other 4 as well, that this marriage could be the end to war as we know it. Naruto was looking at the ground. He sniffled. Yugito wanted to hate him, she wanted to hate him with all her guts. She just learned that she was getting married to him, along with 3 other females. She was getting married to a man that she didn't love. Yugito had always had found worth in her abilities as a kunoichi, in being a good tool to the village. But now she was just getting married off like a common noblewoman. It pissed her off. It really pissed her off. But as she looked at him, she couldn't find it in her to hate him. He looked like the world was crashing down upon him. I accept, for the good of the people of the elemental nations. Yugito said eventually. Even if she loathed to do it, it was a direct order of the cage. Kuretsuchi looked conflicted, but finally gave out a sigh. I accept as well. Fu gave out a tentative, okay. All eyes were on Temari. Sigh for the good of the people of the elemental nations, I accept as well. Well, that's all well and good, but whether or not you are okay with it doesn't mean anything. She pointed to the stamped papers, you're already married to him. She collected all the papers together and handed them to Shikaku. I'm pushing the inauguration to a week from now, so that we can all simultaneously give the news to our citizens. She said to the assorted cages. What does your inauguration have to do with anything? Jiraiya asked. I also plan on telling the secret of Naruto's lineage to the people, as well as the plans for the alliance. Since everyone is going to be happy after the inauguration speech, they're going to take it better. Clever thinking, he said. Now, she said, it's been a long night, and we could all use some shut-eye. I'll get a shinobi to escort you, she pointed to the cages, and their escorts, to the Eastern Dragon. And a shinobi to escort you, she pointed to the 5 that the marriage documents pertain to your residential house. The walk to the residential house was slow and awkward. Luckily enough, it wasn't very far away. A quick look around the house showed that it had a room with a king-sized bed, a room with a queen-sized bed, and a room with 2 twin beds. I'll take the couch, Naruto said. After a little bit of bickering over who was going to sleep where, everyone was in bed. Naruto looked at the clock, it read 12 o'clock. He waited on his couch for an hour, to make sure that everyone was asleep, before he started crying again. He was all out of tears from not an hour before then, so silent sobs racked his body until he managed to find sleep. He wasn't sad. Well, he was actually fairly sad, but he wasn't crying because he was sad. He was just frustrated and confused about the whole up situation he found himself in. Naruto woke up with his eyes completely crusted over. After wiping it away, Naruto looked around. Why was he sleeping on a couch in an unfamiliar house? A loud snore resounded from somewhere from within said house. The memories of what transpired yesterday all came flooding back to him. He looked at the clock on the wall. It read 7 o'clock. Well, there's no way I'm going to fall back asleep, he decided. He walked into the kitchen and checked the fridge. It was fully stocked. Naruto wasn't a chef by any means, but living alone meant having to make his own meals. The smell of eggs and bacon started to waft throughout the house. He decided to be courteous and make more than he could eat for his wives. Wives. Even the thought of being married, much less married to multiple people, was going to take some getting used to. After chowing down, he checked the clock again. 7:30. He was probably going to be late for team assignments, but he didn't particularly care at this point. He just dismally ate his breakfast of eggs and bacon before cleaning up and making to the door. Oh. Mission assignment room. He was actually there early. His new house was a lot closer to the academy than he originally thought. Wait, he had a new house. Didn't that mean that he had to get his stuff from his apartment? He wasn't able to process these things and their ramifications like any reasonable person should at the moment. He looked at the ground sullenly. When Sakura showed up, she could immediately tell something was wrong. Naruto looked gloomy, and even though he looked at her, acknowledging her presence, he didn't say a word. Normally he would be abound with energy and trying to talk up a storm with her. But he just stood there in the lobby area, quiet. They stood in silence for a while. Naruto, is something wrong? She asked. He flinched, and put up a strained smile. No, Sakura, why would you say that? Because you look sad, and you got here earlier than me, which never happens. Can we please just not talk about it? He looked at her eyes and then quickly looked away. Weird, she thought. Naruto's never sad. Something huge must have happened. Sasuke showed up and noticed Naruto's state, but didn't comment on it. Sometimes people just want to be left alone. He was living proof of that concept. They stood alone, in silence, and waited for Kakashi to show up. When he finally did show up, no one said anything and they all quietly walked into the mission assignment room. Kakashi noticed the gloomy aura that was hanging around his team members, and made a mental note to ask them about it while they were on their mission. Do you have any missions available? Kakashi asked to the secretary. Usually the Hokage was there at least in the morning, before heading up to administration to do their paperwork. Since the previous Hokage was regrettably dead, some of the higher-up Jonin were there to hand out assignments. Jiraiya was there instead. Kakashi, I need to borrow Naruto for the day, he said in his most professional tone. Kakashi nodded his head without missing a beat, while all three members of Team 7 looked confused. Jiraiya motioned Naruto to follow him and they exited the room together. Kakashi, what does Jiraiya-sama want with Naruto? Sakura asked. Hell if I know. So do you have any missions available? He directed the question to the secretary. Yes, there's a mission to protect a long-distance runner while on a race. It's recommended a full team, however. We'll take it. How long is it going to last? It should take about 3 days. Okay. You two, get ready for a multi-nighter, and meet me at the gates in 2 hours. They both nodded their heads in confirmation. Oh. Pervy Sage, where's Granny? Naruto asked Jiraiya. They were walking at a leisurely place around Konoha proper. She's at the hospital treating that one kid with the huge eyebrows that you were talking about. In fact, she had just healed your sensei and your teammate from their Tsukiyomi trauma. Oh, I forgot about that. He looked at the ground. Don't worry, brat. You've had a lot on your plate lately. Indeed, it had been quite the 24 hours for Naruto. So what do you need me for? Naruto asked. Well, I thought you might like to talk, ask me for advice, or anything really. I don't need anything, he said stubbornly. Oh really? What about that Sakura girl? Don't you still love her? Of course I do, but I already know the answer if I ask you what you think I should do. Jiraiya's eyebrows raised. Oh, yeah, you're going to say something like, forget about her, all she does is hit you around. Or, forget about her, it's for the good of the elemental nations, or even, forget about her, after all, you have 4 hot wives now. Jiraiya was surprised, but didn't let it show. I wasn't going to say that. He lied. What were you going to say? Jiraiya thought about how to proceed for a moment, then said, name one thing you hate about her. What? Just do it. Naruto adopted a dreamy look for a moment. I can't, she's prefect. Naruto. Yes. You don't love her. Huh. Yeah I do. I really love her. No you don't. You admire her. Well of course I do. Naruto was getting confused. Jiraiya sighed. Naruto, love isn't about admiration, or looking past the flaws that a person has. Love is understanding. Understanding what? Understanding the person, understanding their motives, understanding why they do the things they do. Understanding is love, and admiration is the furthest thing from understanding. A human cannot reasonably say that they hate someone without first giving a reason why they love them. The world doesn't work in black and white. A certain checkered Akatsuki member sneezed. And the same works for the other way. You cannot reasonably love someone without first knowing something that you hate about them. Naruto thought in silence for a while. But don't you admire Granny? Yeah, I do. They both remained silent for a while after that, pondering the philosophies that were just expounded, and their ramifications. Jiraiya. Yeah, what were my parents like? They loved you so much. Jiraiya said, without missing a beat. When they told me I was going to be your godfather, I was so excited. I was finally going to be able to be there for somebody. I was finally going to be able to teach my crafts to someone who might appreciate them. Your crafts? Didn't you teach my dad your crafts? He never really took to them. He answered vaguely. Naruto looked at Jiraiya in confusion. Jiraiya had a perverted look on his face, and his eyebrows were wiggling furiously. Naruto had to laugh, the visage was far too funny not to. Hey, looks like I was able to cheer you up. If only slightly. Jiraiya said. Naruto nodded. Thanks pervy sage. Naruto's mood had increased a little. Do you really think that this is going to work? Naruto asked. What? The whole, arranged marriage, thing. Do I think that it's going to stop war? Yeah, I have no idea. Wow, thanks. I feel so much better, Naruto said sarcastically. Well, it's not like a thing like this has ever been done before, so we don't have a reference. But if we all try our hardest to make this work, I think we might have a shot. Naruto sighed heavily. What am I supposed to do? Do what? Marriage. I haven't even been on a date before in my entire life. And now I'm married to 4 women. I'm 13, I'm not ready for that responsibility yet. I have no idea what you should do. He reiterated. For someone who wanted to give out advice to make me feel better, you give sucky advice. Your situation is a unique one, it's hard to say what you should do. Do I have to love them? You have to be nice to them. Generally, when humans are nice to other humans, those other humans will be nice to the first humans. Even if the other humans joined a harem, against their will, that revolved around the first human. He replied sarcastically. They didn't do it against their will. Didn't you hear them? They accepted the terms and conditions. They accepted for the good of the elemental nations. They didn't want to. They made a sacrifice by doing what they did. They were silent for a bit. What, specifically, was in the marriage document? What do you mean? What are my responsibilities? You mean other than to marry them? Yeah, nothing was specified. But you won't be able to pursue relationships with other women. Why not? Jiraiya paused. Naruto, this marriage isn't for you, or for them, it's for the people. If word got out that you cheated on your wives, it might be taken as a huge insult by the other nation's people. Oh, Naruto said in understanding, and you might also be asked to procreate with them. Jiraiya may have been a pervert, but this was a serious ordeal, and he had to take it seriously, for Naruto's sake. Procreate. Oh shit. You have had the talk. Right? Jiraiya asked. He really didn't want to explain the inner workings of intercourse to a 13-year-old. Yeah, Iruka-sensei told me. Oh thank God, he just didn't know what the word meant. Well, you may be asked to have children with some of them. But why? Naruto was getting red in the face. To strengthen the bonds between the villages. Somehow I knew you were going to say that. He said in deadpan. Jiraiya laughed sheepishly. It was at that point that a shinobi appeared before Jiraiya and Naruto and said, Killer B requests your presence. Killer B? Naruto asked. The Jinchuriki to the 8 tails. Oh, I remember him. What does he want with us? He only specified you. The shinobi pointed to Naruto. Why? Jiraiya asked. I don't know, I was only told to bring him to Training Ground 7. I know where that is, Naruto said. I am coming with him. Jiraiya said. B didn't say that he couldn't bring others. The shinobi said. Thank you, you are dismissed, we'll take it from here. Jiraiya said. Oh. Training Ground 7. There were 3 people sitting down by corresponding wooden posts. One was occupied with B. One was occupied with Yugito. One was occupied with Fu. They were waiting for the other 2 that were sent for to show up. They spotted a dot on the horizon that slowly enlarged until they could make out the shape of Gaara riding sand across the sky like a magic carpet. He descended until he was touching the ground. Yo. Sit down, yo. B said with a friendly tone. Gaara sat down without word. Two other figures emerged from the tree line. One was Jiraiya, and the other was Naruto. Naruto sat down with them. Since we're all here, I'll explain why B got us to gather here. Yugito said. B wants to take advantage of the fact that there are 5 Jinchuriki in one place at one time. By having a powwow with the tailed beasts. A powwow? Naruto asked. By physically touching each other, Jinchuriki can link mindscapes and are able to talk with other tailed beasts from other Jinchuriki that are also touching. Mindscape? Naruto and Fu asked simultaneously. They both then made eye contact, blushed, and quickly looked away. You two haven't conversed with your tailed beast yet. Well, I have, but that was only to collect my rent. Naruto said. Your rent? I fell down a huge ravine, so I appeared before Kyuubi Tem, and told him to pay rent by lending me his power. B looked slightly uncomfortable with the idea of what happened, but didn't comment on it. Well, that place you went to is called your mindscape. Although it is technically a manifestation of your chakra system. Yugito said. So what do you mean by physical contact? Gaara asked. We just bump fists. Yugito said. She stood up, which everyone took as their cue to stand up as well. B held out his fist, and everyone met in the middle. Fu and Naruto blushed slightly at the physical contact. Oh. Shared mindscape. Naruto stood before the grand cage that seemingly held back the mighty Kyuubi no Kitsune with only a flimsy piece of paper. It was his first time getting a really good look at it, the Kyuubi. The Kyuubi did not look like a fox in the normal sense. It was completely orange, except for the eyes and ears, which shared a pair of black stripes going through both of them. It also had a human-like torso. Human? What do you want? The Kyuubi fell silent though, as it took stock of the situation. It was facing a room in the shape of a pentagon, each of its sides had a different room. And its cage had turned into an actual boxed cage, with bars on the sides, so it could see the cages of the Biju that were beside him. To his left was the cage of the Aikibi. To his right was the cage of the Nanabi. To his front left was the cage of the Nibi. To his front right was the cage of the Hachibi. The cages of the Nibi and Hachibi, however, had no bars on the front of their cages, signifying freedom. All of the cages also had a human standing in front of it. What is the meaning of this? The Kyuubi grumbled. I would like to know as well. This came from the Nanabi. Yugito answered. In a rare event, 5 Jinchuriki ended up in the same place, so we thought it would be wise to allow you, she gestured to the tailed beasts, to talk. Quote. Talk about what? Shukaku asked. Don't you have anything to say to each other, after not seeing each other for such a long time? Fu asked. She might be new to what Jinchuriki did on a regular basis, but she did have a slight understanding of what happened to all the Biju. We didn't lead the most social of lives before our sealing, the Nanabi said. And we didn't gain one after our sealing, the Kyuubi added. So we don't have much to talk about. Shukaku said. Plus we don't really like each other. Nibi said. Yo, you guys are family, and family sticks together, we. B brought out his notepad to write down that sick rhyme. It wouldn't be there when he got out of the shared mindscape. Either he didn't notice, or he didn't care, because he just kept on blissfully writing. Yuki, you wanna shut up your annoying human? The Kyuubi asked. No. Yuki said. The Kyuubi was more surprised than anything. Why not? Because I like my container, and I trust him. The Kyuubi burst out laughing. It was an awful, ear-rending laugh. You trust your container? Oh, that's rich. Humans are all the same, they only pretend to be nice to you, in order to gain your power as their own. Humans are vain, greedy creatures, with no thoughts of anyone else other than their own. Least of all, the so-called tailed beasts. To them, we are only a means to an end. Some humans are different, they are capable of compassion beyond your comprehension. The Nibi said, compassion. Ha! Because of humans and their greed, I have spent the better part of my existence under a genjutsu, stuck in a cage, or crucified on a rock. If there is human compassion out there, I have not found hide nor hair of it. Shukaku and Chome felt slightly awkward just watching the three of them yell at each other. Even if Shukaku agreed with the Kyuubi's point of view, you just have to look for it, was Matabi's response. Where can I find this human compassion when I'm stuck in a cage all alone, with no one beside me? It would appear that there is a valid example right in front of you. Matabi said, but you aren't human, how would you be able to show human compassion? The Kyuubi asked, clearly confused, and not even thinking that Naruto could be the one she was speaking of. Matabi wasn't referring to itself, Matabi was referring to the human in front of you. Yuki cleared up. The Kyuubi looked down at Naruto. Him. The one who demanded that I give him power because of the fact that I am imprisoned inside of him. From what I understand, he only did that so he could save himself from death. Yuki said. From what I understand, he took my power for his own selfish reasons. The Kyuubi replied. Saving yourself from death is selfish now. Taking power that isn't yours has always been selfish. Yuki sighed. Kura. Don't call me that. I will not allow any worthless human to hear my name. You are being childish, Matabi said. And you are being unreasonable. While this exchange had been going on, Naruto had been going through some self-reflection. When the Kyuubi was sealed into Naruto, it ruined his life. But it sounded like the Kyuubi didn't want, or mean to get sealed into him. While Naruto grew up alone, the Kyuubi had been growing up alone alongside him. Except the Kyuubi didn't have anyone to talk to, no precious people to protect. He thought about how Gaara had grown up, surrounded by hatred and malice. He eventually grew insane from the grief that he received. The Kyuubi was no different in that respect. Naruto hadn't even tried to understand the Kyuubi. He just let what he was told about it to cloud his visage. In that respect, he was no better than the villagers that hated him for reasons beyond their comprehension. I'm sorry, Naruto said quietly. Wait, what? I'm sorry for taking your chakra when I was mad about Sasuke dying. I didn't know the whole story of your sealing inside of me, and I was being unreasonable. I'm very sorry. Naruto bowed. After realizing what he did, he decided to apologize as sincerely as he could. He wasn't exactly very used to sincere apologies, but he was giving it his best. If this is a trick, this isn't a trick, I swear. I will do anything to make up to you the chakra that I took from you, Naruto practically yelled. Oh really? Then rip off the seal, and let me go free. The Kyuubi said with a conniving tone. You are being unreasonable, Kurama. He'll die, Matabi practically yelled at him, which was out of character for it. But the Kyuubi cut it off in anger, with a huge scream. I told you not to call me that. The Kyuubi's tail smashed against the bars that held in him. The shockwaves were reverberating within the skulls of not only the humans, but also the tailed beasts. The Kyuubi roared again in anger, and attempted to shoot a mini beast ball against the bars, but it blew up in its face. The resounding shockwave was so powerful that it severed the connection of the other four. The Kyuubi huffed, and sat down on its haunches. Its face hurt, it just wanted to sleep, just wanted to let loose some of its frustration. I won't call you that. I won't call you that. Not if you don't want me to. Huh. But I will call you that eventually, when I teach you that there are good humans out there as the world as well. It was a promise that Naruto had decided to carry through. It was a conviction and Naruto was convicted to it. Naruto turned around and walked out of the mindscape environment. After it was sure Naruto was gone, Kurama laid down to rest. That conversation had been emotionally heavy for it. Kurama made sure that the mental connection was off, as it always was, before allowing tears of frustration to roll out of his eyes for the first time since he was sealed into Mito. No, it was not sad. It was angry. Angry that a human had gotten the better of it. After Naruto went out of the house to meet up with his team, it wasn't long before everyone else was awake. This stemmed mostly from Kuretsuchi's snoring. It was really loud. So loud, in fact, that after Fu was woken up, she immediately threw her pillow at the sleeping teenager, as they were the ones sharing the room with twin beds. Kuretsuchi continued to snore. Temari, who had bags under her eyes, banged open the door and proceeded to take the pillow that was on Kuretsuchi to continually bash her body with it. Kuretsuchi continued to snore. Yugito walked into the door next, grabbed Kuretsuchi's ankles, and pulled her out of bed. Kuretsuchi awoke with a start. She had a headache, a sore body, and really wanted to go back to sleep. Her head fell back onto the floor, and she closed her eyes. Kuretsuchi continued to snore. They all had bags under their eyes, they were all extremely annoyed for a variety of reasons, and they all looked at Kuretsuchi, wondering what they would do to her. And that was how they all woke up to their first morning of married life. After everyone had sufficiently woken up, they went to get some breakfast. They all sat at the table, eating slowly, mired in awkward silence. Well, this sucks, Kuretsuchi said, summing up the situation perfectly. Be quiet. This comment came from Temari, who had a pounding headache. Who shoved a kunai up your? If another thing comes out of your mouth, I'm going to shove my battle fan so far down your throat, you'll be coughing wind. You wanna put your money where your mouth is? Temari glared at her, but did not rise up to the challenge. Temari was in a really bad mood, but that didn't mean she was in the mood for killing. Will both of you shut up? This came from Yugito. Christ, I am surrounded by children. Yugito wasn't in a particularly good mood either. They sat in silence after that. Fu ventured. So what? Kuretsuchi said tiredly. So shouldn't we get to know each other better, or something? Why? Because we're all married. Fu spoke in deadpan. No one spoke up. There was a knock on the door. Yugito answered it, and was greeted by a messenger ninja. Yugito ni and Fu are requested to meet at Training Ground 7 with Killer B. Okay. Just a second. She went back to get Fu and they both followed the ninja to Training Ground 7. Where are we going? She asked. Training Ground 7. Why? No clue. This left Kuretsuchi and Temari alone. So what now? Kuretsuchi asked. I'm going to an empty training ground to let off some steam. I'll join you. Temari looked slightly displeased, but didn't deny her. Oh. Training Ground 7, after the connection severing. Fu, Yugito, and B were sprawled on ground after getting expelled from their mindscape. Gaara would be too, if not for the sand that caught him. Jiraiya looked on with raised eyebrows. Does that usually happen? Fu asked. Not that I've experienced. Yugito replied. They all got up and looked at Naruto, who was still standing with his eyes closed. Is there something wrong with him? Gaara asked. Just as he said that, Naruto's eyes shot open. Are you okay, brat? Jiraiya asked. Yeah, I'm good. Maybe we should get you to Tsunade. Nah, I'm fine. Naruto looked at B. Anything else? B shook his head. This was one freaky little kid. Naruto looked up at the sun's position. It wasn't even noon yet. He looked at Jiraiya. What now? I have to meet up with Baki. Gaara said. Yo, I have to talk with bro. B said. And I have to report to Tsunade. Jiraiya said. He didn't really have to do that, he just saw it as a golden opportunity to get Naruto to socialize with his wives. Naruto looked at Fu and Yugito. Do you guys have anything to do? They both shook their heads. How about I show you around Konoha? You mean a ramen shop and the top of the monument? Fu asked cheekily. You are never going to let that down, are you? He asked. Nope. She smiled, and he smiled back sheepishly. Yugito looked at them interact. It's almost like they're acting like friends. Did you two know each other before the meeting at administration? She got here earlier than you did, so I showed her around Konoha. A ramen shop, and the top of the monument. She repeated. I was working on very little time. He cried in indignation. Fu giggled. I'm married to this guy. Yugito thought. Oh. Konoha proper. As they walked around, he pointed out various landmarks. The clan compounds, the market, the residential areas, the training grounds. It was a proper tour. One which hit a snag. A snag named Ino. Hey Naruto. Ino cried out, while waving her arms to get his attention. She was standing next to Shikamaru, Choji, and Asuma. She ran up to him, with the others falling behind her at a more sedate pace. I thought you and Sasuke were on a mission. She said. Oh, they went on a mission this morning, but I was left behind. Oh, she said in a depressed tone. She was hoping that Sasuke was still in Konoha. Hey Naruto, Shikamaru said, who had caught up by now along with the rest of the team. Yo. Shikamaru's eyes narrowed. Why is Naruto walking around with a waterfall kunoichi, and a cloud kunoichi? They shouldn't have any business in Konoha. Who are your friends? He asked. Oh yeah, this is Yugito and Fu, he gestured to them respectively. And they are Shikamaru, Choji, Ino, and their sensei, Asuma. He gestured to the members of Team 10. We just got back from a C-rank mission, Ino said. We're going to celebrate at a barbecue place. Wanna come with? Choji added, while munching on his chips. Naruto looked at Yugito and Fu for confirmation, they both shrugged. Sure, he answered. They began walking to the barbecue place at a comfortable pace. So what are a cloud, and a waterfall kunoichi doing in Konoha? Asuma asked amicably. Yugito adopted a sullen look, while Naruto and Fu both sported bright blushes. Which didn't go unnoticed by Asuma and Shikamaru. We're here for peace talks. Yugito said plainly. And I'm escorting them around Konoha. Naruto said. Peace talks? Asuma said in an astounded tone. How long were we away? Long enough for me to get married to someone half my age, Yugito thought to herself. Tsunade said that she's announcing what happened at the peace talks at her inauguration in a week. Naruto said. I thought that the peace talks were still going on. Fu stated. Well, I wouldn't know, I'm just a lowly genin. Chunin, Yugito corrected. Team 10's eyes widened. Naruto, you got promoted? Ino asked incredulously. Yeah, just keep it on the down low for now. Why? Because it has something to do with what Tsunade is going to announce at her inauguration. Why would your promotion be something to announce at her inauguration? Shikamaru asked. Look, can we just drop the subject? Okay man. Oh. Training Ground 34. Kuretsuchi and Temari were on the ground, gasping for air. They were both running on low reserves after what they did to that forest. That poor forest. When they both arrived there, Kuretsuchi thought that Temari wanted to spar against her. She was proven wrong, however, when Temari blasted a war cry, swung her fan, and released a gale of winds with cutting wind chakra inside at the tree line. Kuretsuchi shrugged and threw a jutsu out that skewered the trees that were on the ground with spikes of rock. About an hour after continuing to commit tree genocide, they were on the ground, gasping for air. The forest at their side didn't deserve to be called a forest anymore, more like a huge pile of twigs and jagged rocks with poisonous quicklime hanging around. You weren't half bad. Kuretsuchi huffed, all hostility to Temari gone. Apparently forest destruction was really good release. No wonder Leaf Ninja were so happy all the time. Thanks, she huffed in return. They stayed like that for a while. You're right, Temari said. Huh, about what you said this morning. This situation that we're in, it sucks. It could be worse. Temari gave a dry laugh. How so? He could be an old, perverted geezer, who peeps on women at bathhouses. Jiraiya sneezed, which alerted the women at the bathhouse that he was peeping on. Oh me, Jiraiya thought. All the women started to either brandish weapons, or start jutsu. I didn't even know they were kunoichi. Temari gave another dry laugh. Yeah, silver linings I guess. Kuretsuchi got up and announced, I'm starving. We just had breakfast. I have a quick metabolism. Well, I'm not eating anything. Well, I am. Get up. Temari grumbled as she complied with the request. Oh. Administration building. Tsunade was trying to sign paperwork when Jiraiya entered, battered, bruised, and bleeding profusely. She quirked a brow. Hey Haim, you pervert. Yeah, he said dismissively. What do you want? Oh, don't be so cold Haim. Her stare could melt steel. Just wanted to talk about Naruto. Is this about the training trip that you were talking about? Yeah, I was thinking that we should take advantage of the alliance, and have Naruto cycle around the villages to train under the best that they have to offer. I thought that the whole point of having Naruto go on a training trip was so that the Akatsuki wouldn't know where he was at any given point, and that you would be there to protect him. Well, I would have to run my spy operation in order to get intel on the Akatsuki's movements. But if he continually cycles through the villages at a random pattern, that would decrease the risk to the point that I wouldn't need to be there. What makes you think that they'll give him the best teachers that they have? Didn't you tell them about the Akatsuki? The entire reason for the training trip in the first place was to prepare him for them. I would think that the other villages want the Jinchuriki to be as strong as they could be. I did tell them, but they seem confident in their ability to fend them off. Well, most of the trip was going to revolve around him training to get a handle on the Kyuubi's power. It doesn't really matter if he has a subpar Genjutsu or Taijutsu teacher. The other village's Jinchuriki could teach him all that he needs to know. Okay, but how is he going to get from village to village? The teams with the Hirshin. You neglected to tell me that only one team in all of Konoha knows the Hirshin, and that's the Hokage's bodyguard unit. Huh, I thought that there were more. Can't you just train other units? The Hirshin is an extremely powerful jutsu, one that few could only perceive on a very basic level. It would take months to train other units. It's a wonder how the second or the fourth learned how to manipulate it to the extent that it became useful in battle. Can't we just have the team tag places at the villages, and contact them with a messenger bird to let them know when and where to teleport to next? Maybe. It would be extremely chakra intensive though. Good. Then while we do that, you could train more teams in the meantime. Like I said, it's really hard to even understand. It could take a while to find out who would be compatible with it. But it can be done. Yes. Perfect. Then it's decided. In a week, Naruto will go on a training trip that encompasses all of the major hidden villages. Except for Mist. Well, yeah, but they're still having the civil war. It wouldn't be the best environment for Naruto to learn how to control the Kyuubi. Yeah, I know. So when are the cages leaving? We just finished finalizing everything. All the cages are leaving tomorrow. But they're leaving their companions here. Why? Can't remember. Something about trust between the nations. You know Harem, you just created peace between the elemental nations, and you aren't even Hokage yet. Not all the nations. But as soon as word gets out about the joint alliance, every other villages are going to want to join in as well. Well, it's not like I created a unified nation, we just agreed not to kill each other anymore. Still, it's close to something that I have spent my whole life trying to succeed in, and one that you accomplished in 2 days. It's mostly due to Minato's stupidity. Whenever an alliance was made between two nations, demands were made between them, which lowered trust and made for a reasonable excuse to try and stab each other in the backs. But with all of the nations together, they got scared to make demands on the individual level, as they might be excluded from the deal for being greedy. With the marriage deal, it allowed for us all to come together at the same time. Is that what happened? That's how Shizune explained it to me. Is that all? Yeah. We should go out for drinks after this. A party celebrating the do not kill each other treaty. If this is just an excuse to get me drunk. No, of course not, Jiraiya said quickly. Okay then, I'll be at the bar at 7. Which one? The one we all used to go to after a completed mission. Got it, he said, as he walked out the door.